Alien invasion. The day humanity refused to surrender, it wasn't a warning. It wasn't an accident. It was an invasion. For centuries, we looked at the stars, wondering if we were alone. And then, one day, they answered. Not with words, not with peace, but with war. The first signs. It started as a whisper in the darkness, a strange signal, something deep in space, moving closer to Earth. Astronomers detected shifts in the stars, distortions in reality itself. Governments were alerted, satellites were focused, and then one night the sky changed. The stars didn't just move, they vanished. Something massive, something unnatural, was blocking the sky. And then, the first ships arrived. The arrival. They didn't land in the open. They didn't send ambassadors. They came in silence. Massive obsidian warships descended from the clouds, their dark forms casting shadows over entire cities. At first, people thought it was a hoax. Then the power grids failed. Phones went silent. The internet collapsed. And in that darkness, the first attack began, the first strike. It happened in seconds. Entire cities, gone, not bombed, not burned, just erased. A pulse of invisible energy sweeping across the land. One moment, the streets were filled with life. The next, nothing remained. Millions of people vanished without a trace, not a scream, not a warning, just emptiness. And then, the real slaughter began. The Earth fights back. The militaries of the world rushed into action. Jets scrambled. Missiles launched. Nuclear warheads were armed and fired. But it didn't matter. Our best weapons did nothing. The warships absorbed the blasts. Bullets melted mid-air. Tanks and jets collapsed into dust before they could even fire. It was as if the aliens weren't just invading us. They were replacing us. The panic. The world collapsed overnight. Governments fell apart. The internet was dead. Communication was impossible. Every city burned, and the only law left was survival. People ran. People hid. But there was nowhere to go. Because the aliens weren't just destroying cities. They were taking people. The silent harvest. They didn't come for land. They didn't come for resources. They came for us, everywhere. Mass abductions took place. People were lifted into the sky, pulled by invisible forces, screaming, begging. And then, just like that, gone. Families were ripped apart. Friends disappeared in front of each other's eyes. No one knew where they were taken. And those who resisted were erased. The fall of civilization. In 72 hours, the Earth was no longer ours. The world's armies had been obliterated. The cities were deserted graveyards, and humanity, we had been hunted to the brink of extinction. To the invaders, the war was already over. To them, we were nothing more than a defeated species, something to be collected and discarded. But they had made one mistake. They thought humanity would surrender. They thought we would kneel. They thought the fight was finished, but they were wrong. Because humanity does not break. Humanity does not kneel. And in the deepest shadows of the ruined world, the resistance was born. The invasion begins. The world had fallen. Cities were nothing but ruins. The air was thick with smoke, and the sky, once filled with stars, was now dominated by their warships. The Zephyrians believed they had already won, but they didn't understand. They didn't understand humanity, and before this war was over, we were going to teach them. The new reality. Every day, the world grew quieter. The streets, once filled with life, were now ghost towns. The news? Gone. The internet? Dead. The only voices left were those of the survivors, whispering, running, hiding. Everyone who had survived the first wave knew the truth. This was not just a war, this was a harvest. The aliens weren't just destroying us. They were taking us. The human extinction plan. No one knew why the Zephyrians needed humans. Some believed we were being experimented on. Others thought we were being enslaved. But the truth? The truth was far worse. They weren't just collecting our bodies. They were collecting our minds, our thoughts, our memories. Everything that made us human, and once they had taken enough of us, they were going to wipe out the rest. The pockets of resistance, but not everyone was captured. In the ruins of cities, in the depths of underground bunkers, the last survivors refused to give up. They were soldiers, scientists, hackers, and everyday people. Strangers who had nothing left to lose, and, together, they became something else. Something the Xipherians had never faced before. They became the Resistance. The first counterattack. The Xipherians had destroyed our military bases. They had taken down our weapons systems. But there was one thing they had underestimated: human ingenuity. A group of scientists, hidden deep beneath the ruins of Geneva, had spent weeks studying alien technology, and in their hands, they created something new. A weapon built from stolen Xipherian tech. A weapon that could do what nothing else could: kill them. The Battle of Outpost 9. The first real battle of the Resistance happened in what was once Los Angeles. The Xipherians had set up an outpost, a command center where they processed human captives. It was a fortress, guarded by elite alien soldiers. But the Resistance had a plan. They moved at night, slipping through the shadows. They planted charges in the heart of the outpost, and when the first explosion erupted, the Resistance attacked in full force. Laser. Fire filled the streets. Explosions ripped through the sky. For the first time in the war, the Xipherians bled. And when the dust settled, the Resistance had won. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Enough to prove that the invincible weren't invincible. Enough to prove that humanity still had a chance. The Xipherians strike back. The fall of Outpost 9 sent a message across the planet. Humanity wasn't gone. Humanity wasn't done. And the Xipherians noticed. Their response was brutal. They didn't just bomb cities, they poisoned the air. They blocked the sun, plunging the earth into eternal twilight. They turned the world into a living nightmare. But they had made one final mistake. They thought it would break us. Instead, it made us stronger. Because now this wasn't just about survival. This was about revenge. The beginning of the war. The Resistance knew the truth now. They knew the Xipherians weren't gods. They weren't unstoppable. They could be beaten. They could be killed. And if there was one thing humanity was good at, it was war. The Resistance spread across the world. Small groups of survivors became armies. Scientists and hackers decoded alien weapons, making them our own. We were no longer hiding. We were fighting. And before this war was over, we would make them regret ever coming to Earth. The first signs of resistance. Alien invasion. The day humanity refused to surrender, they thought they had won. They thought we were finished. But in the ruins of our world, humanity was changing. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were becoming something new, something deadlier. And soon, the invaders would learn fear, the underground movement. The resistance didn't start with soldiers. It started with ordinary people. People who had lost everything. People who had nothing left to fear. And in the shadows of the fallen cities, they began to fight back. Doctors and scientists worked in secret bunkers studying alien weapons. Hackers and engineers cracked enemy codes, learning how to shut down their tech. Fighters and scavengers stole supplies, preparing for something bigger. The world belonged to the invaders. But the night still belonged to us. The first kill 4 weeks, the resistance had avoided direct combat. They studied, they planned, they waited. Until the day came when waiting was no longer an option. It happened in the ruins of London. A squad of alien patrol units was hunting for survivors. They moved through the streets like ghosts, scanning buildings, searching for human life. They had never been challenged. They had never been afraid. But that night, they learned something new. The first ambush was silent. The Resistance used EMP weapons, built from salvaged alien cores, to disable their shields. Then, in the darkness, human fighters struck, blades, bullets, fire, whatever they had, and for the first time, an alien soldier fell. For the first time, the Resistance had a victory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The Zephyrians take notice. The aliens didn't understand us. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, and never, not once, had a species fought back like this. We were primitive, we were weaker, and yet somehow, we were winning battles. The Zephyrians reacted the only way they knew how. They sent more soldiers. They hunted the Resistance. They wiped out entire towns, just to send a message, but with every attack, we only grew stronger because the more they tried to break us, the more we learned how to break them. The first human weapon. The biggest problem was their shields. Normal weapons, bullets, explosives, even nuclear missiles couldn't get through. But then in a hidden lab deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a team of human scientists made a breakthrough. They had spent weeks dissecting alien technology, trying to understand how the Zephyrians protected themselves, and finally, they figured it out. The shields weren't just energy fields, they were frequencies, and if we could match those frequencies, we could shatter them. The Battle of Black Ridge. The Resistance needed to test their new weapon, and they didn't have to wait long. A Zephyrian outpost had been established in Colorado, a command center where hundreds of humans were being processed for abduction. The Resistance had one goal: destroy the outpost, save the prisoners, and prove that humanity could fight. The attack begins. The Resistance fighters moved before dawn, slipping through the canyons. They had one chance, one strike. The first EMP blasts detonated in the air, disrupting the alien drones. The new frequency disruptors activated, tearing through the Zephyrian shields like glass. And then, the Resistance charged. The turning point. The battle was chaos. Human fighters stormed the compound, using stolen alien weapons against their makers. Explosions ripped through the sky, lighting up the mountains. Zephyrian soldiers fought back hard, but for the first time. They weren't invincible. One by one, they fell. By sunrise, the outpost was in flames. The prisoners? Freed. And humanity had just won its biggest victory yet. The message sent. Across the stars, the fall of Black Ridge sent a message, not just to the Zephyrians, but to the entire galaxy. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians had lost control of a planet. For the first time. A species had stood against them and won. They had thought we were weak. They had thought we were defenseless. They had thought we were nothing. But now they knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting. Humanity was winning, and the war had only just begun. The warships, alien invasion. The day humanity refused to surrender. The Resistance had proven a point. The Zephyrians were not invincible. Their ships could fall. Their soldiers could die. And for the first time in history, they were afraid. But fear makes the stronger even deadlier. And the Zephyrians were about to unleash their full power. The Zephyrian retaliation, they did not hesitate. They did not negotiate. They burned everything. Entire forests were set on fire. From orbit, the oceans boiled under unknown Zephyrian technology. Cities still standing were turned into toxic wastelands. They wanted total control. No more hiding. No more survivors. No more resistance. They were not just fighting a war. They were purging an entire species. Humanity fights smarter. But the more they tightened their grip, the more we slipped through. We stopped fighting like an army. We fought like predators. We didn't face them head-on. We struck from the shadows. Resistance fighters hijacked enemy supply routes and starved out their forces. Hackers shut down their surveillance networks, blinding their sensors. Scientists developed biochemical disruptors that made Zephyrian armor useless. The war had changed. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were hunting them. The fall of the Sky Fortress. The Xipherians had built a command center over what was once Moscow, a floating fortress directing their war efforts. It was their strongest base on Earth, their last defense, and the Resistance decided it would be their first true target. The attack would take everything we had. 3 stolen Xipherian warships, an army of Resistance fighters, a single nuclear device modified with alien energy. If this worked, the war would shift forever. The mission that changed the war. The Resistance launched the attack before sunrise. They flew in fast using hacked Xipherian access codes to bypass security. For a moment, it worked. The fleet moved undetected, slipping into enemy territory. And then, the alarm sounded. The Xipherians knew, and the real battle began. The sky burns. The floating fortress was protected by dozens of enemy warships. Lasers filled the air. Missiles exploded in the sky. Ships fell in flames, crashing into the earth below. But the Resistance kept pushing forward, because they had one goal, one mission: destroy the core. The final assault. The Resistance soldiers breached the command tower, fighting through Xipherian elites. One by one they fell. The halls were slick with blood, human and alien alike. The Resistance leader, Captain Elias Cade, made it to the reactor chamber. The modified bomb was armed. 1 minute. 60 seconds until the fortress was gone. And that's when the Xipherian High Lord appeared, the duel for Earth. No one had ever seen a High Lord before. The being that stood before Elias Cade was taller than any human, wrapped in an armor that seemed to shift like liquid metal. Its voice was not spoken aloud, it was in his mind. You fight for nothing. Your world is already dead. You cannot win. But Cade just smiled, because behind him the countdown had reached 10 seconds and humanity had already won. The Sky Fortress falls. Cade never left that chamber. No one did, because when the timer hit 0, the entire fortress detonated. A fireball of energy erupted across the sky, sending a shockwave felt across the entire planet. And when the flames cleared, the fortress was gone, the command structure was broken, and the Xipherians, they had just lost their greatest weapon. The war turns in humanity's favor. The destruction of the Sky Fortress was more than just a victory, it was a message to the Xipherians, to the Resistance, to the universe. Humanity was no longer running. Humanity was no longer hiding. We were fighting, and we were winning. The beginning of the final war, the Xipherians were wounded, but they were not beaten. They still had the mothership. They still had their ultimate weapon, and they still had one last plan, because if they couldn't control Earth, they would destroy it. And humanity had one chance to stop them. A suicide mission into the heart of the Xipherian mothership. A mission that would decide the fate of the world forever. The final battle. The war had reached its breaking point. The Resistance had crippled the Xipherians, but the enemy was not finished. They had one last move. If they couldn't rule Earth, they would erase it. And we had one last chance to stop them. This was it. Humanity's final battle. The mothership, the last threat high above Earth, the Xipherian mothership hovered in the sky. It was the size of a continent, a floating fortress of pure destruction. Deep inside, their final weapon was being activated. Planet killer device 1 blast, and Earth would be turned into a lifeless rock. We had 1 hour to stop it. One mission, one chance. And failure meant the end of everything. The suicide mission. The Resistance gathered its best fighters, pilots, hackers, soldiers. Each one knew this was a one-way trip. But no one hesitated, because if Earth fell, then humanity's fight would end forever. Breaking into the mothership, the plan was insane. But it was our only shot. A stolen Xipherian warship, hacked with Resistance controls, would slip through the enemy defenses. The moment we got inside, we had 10 minutes to reach the core, 10 minutes to plant the final explosive, and 10 minutes to escape, if we were lucky. The battle in space as the Resistance ship launched toward the mothership, the sky exploded, Xipherian fighters swarmed, from every direction. Resistance pilots fought them off, dodging plasma fire. Missiles screamed through the darkness, tearing ships apart. The sky was burning, and in the chaos, the resistance ship broke through. We were inside, fighting in the heart of the enemy. The inside of the mothership was like a nightmare. Dark corridors, walls that moved like living flesh. A feeling of being watched. And then, the Zypherian elites arrived. These were not the soldiers we had fought before. These were the true warriors of their race. Faster, stronger, merciless, and they were waiting for us. The last stand. The resistance fought like demons. Gunfire flashed in the darkness. Blades clashed in brutal combat. Blood, human and alien alike, painted the walls. One by one, our fighters fell. But they never stopped moving forward, because failure was not an option. Reaching the core, the planet killer device was already charging. In 3 minutes, Earth would be destroyed. The last surviving fighter, Commander Rain Carter, stumbled into the core chamber. She was bleeding, she was broken, but she was still alive. And in her hands, the final explosive. The final decision. There was no time left, no way to escape. She had one choice. Stay, detonate the bomb manually, and die with the ship. She didn't hesitate. She placed the explosive on the core, and as the countdown began, she spoke the last words the Zypherians would ever hear. This is for Earth. The mothership falls. The explosion was like a new sun. A shockwave tore through the sky. The mothership broke apart, piece by piece. The Zypherian fleet, still connected to the mothership's core, shut down instantly. One by one, their warships collapsed, crashing into the earth below. And then, it was over. The Zypherians were gone. Humanity had won. But our greatest hero, Commander Carter, she never came home. The aftermath. The earth was in ruins. Billions were dead. But we were alive. And that meant everything. We rebuilt. We grew stronger, and we never forgot. The Zypherians had come to wipe us out. But instead, they made us unstoppable. The final transmission weeks after the war ended, the last remaining resistance members decoded one final Zypherian message, a signal sent from deep space. It wasn't a call for reinforcements. It wasn't a distress signal. It was a warning. You were not meant to win. We are coming. And in that moment, we realized the truth. This wasn't the end of the war. It was just the beginning. Humanity's final message to the universe, to whoever was listening out there, to whatever was coming next. We had one message. We will never surrender. Come for us again, and we will make you regret it. Because we were no longer just survivors. We were warriors. We were conquerors, and if another enemy dared to invade Earth, we wouldn't just fight back. We would take the war to them.